This is breaking news from RTV6, working for you.
Breaking news to begin this midday as the state's largest police department implements a major reform, one that activists have called for from police departments all across our country. Today, IMPD Chief Randall Taylor announced that Metro Police would no longer use what is known as a no-knock warrant when attempting to arrest suspects or gather evidence. A no-knock warrant authorizes police to enter first without knocking and announcing the officer's presence. There's been a national campaign against them since the police shooting death back in March of Black EMT Breonna Taylor in Louisville, Kentucky. Taylor was killed by police after a no-knock warrant was served at her apartment and her boyfriend opened fire at the officers, thinking they were intruders. Chief Taylor says the ban in Indianapolis took effect July 17th. He issued a statement saying, "Our continued dialogue with residents has allowed us to better understand what they expect of us as a police department and make changes that benefit all in our community." Ending the authorization of a no-knock warrant is a significant step for IMPD, one that has been championed by the men and women of this agency, as well as the neighbors they serve, end quote. We have much more on this developing story right now at theindychannel.com. Taking a turn now to our forecast. Last time we chatted, Todd, this morning, it was a pretty active radar. What's going on right now for our lunch hour?
You know, there's still a lot of rain out there, Lauren, and we're still dealing with a few thunderstorms. Once again, nothing severe here at this noon hour, but we are dealing with these waves of rain that continue to move through. As far as what's happening right now, one of the last remaining waves is making its way here through the Seymour area into North Vernon and Versailles, and as we slide a little further to the north, to get into the Greensburg area, some light rain, Rushville, Connorsville, some rainfall as well. And then as you get towards I-70, that's basically the cutoff of the rainfall. And you notice a few lightning strikes there in Fayette County over in the Connorsville area. And then we have this one storm that's not producing any lightning or any longer, but it was earlier in the Brazil area. So last night, we had the wave of rain go through. We had one this morning, the one that's currently going through. I think we're done with these waves of rain moving along a stationary front. Now, if we get into some sunshine this afternoon, instead of those waves of rain, I do think we'll start to fire up some individual isolated storms. And some of those isolated storms will still have the potential to be strong to severe across the area, so that's something we'll have to keep an eye on. We're still under the marginal risk of severe weather from the Storm Prediction Center. We'll talk more about the storms today when finally there's a change in this unsettled weather pattern coming up in just a few minutes. Lauren.
Todd, thank you. Breaking this midday, one of the men charged in what prosecutors say was a racially motivated attack out in Lake Monroe is asking for a special prosecutor to be assigned. Call 6 Investigates has also learned that the attorney for Sean Purdy plans to ask a judge to move the trial out of Monroe County due to the publicity around this case. Purdy is one of the 2 men facing criminal charges for his involvement in the July 4th incident. Purdy is accused of restraining Vox Booker during this encounter, which was recorded on video and went viral. Booker called the incident a near lynching. Purdy has denied that allegation, even though a report from the Department of Natural Resources also recommended that Booker be charged with a crime. The Monroe County prosecutor declined to do so. And we now know more about the plans to limit attendance at next month's Indianapolis 500 due to the COVID-19 pandemic. This morning, executives with the Indianapolis Motor Speedway released an 88-page plan with what things should look like when the race is held next month. The track says attendance for the race is now anticipated to be at 25% of capacity at IMS. That will be no more than 87,500 fans. Even if that many people attend the race, it will still be the largest event held in the U.S. since the pandemic began. Also, everyone at the track will be required to wear masks, and the race will be broadcast on live television locally for the first time since 2016. Also today, the 500 Festival announced it was canceling all remaining in-person events this year, including the 500 Festival Parade and the Breakfast at the Brickyard. We have a complete rundown of what the Indy 500 will look like this year. It's all on our website, theindychannel.com. Some new numbers on COVID-19 just in from the State Department of Health, and it's another day when cases are on the rise. 763 new cases of COVID-19 were reported. 763 is also the 7-day moving average, which is yet another record. 14 new deaths were also reported, and the intensive bed capacity dropped slightly to 36.6%. And in just a few hours, Governor Holcomb will give an update on the state of the pandemic here in Indiana. RTV6 caught up with the governor at an unrelated event on Tuesday, and we asked him whether he planned to tighten restrictions in the state due to the rising number of coronavirus cases.
I don't want to mislead anyone. I'm not going to take anything off the table. You mentioned California, New York, Florida, Texas, who are seeing these, surges. When it makes sense to move forward or to stand still or to roll back, we will.
Indiana is in what the governor calls stage 4.5 of reopening through at least the end of this month. Holcomb's Democratic opponent in the race for governor is calling for a mask mandate for Indiana schools. Many school districts have already said that students, teachers, and staff will have to wear face coverings. But Dr. Woody Meyer says the governor should make that mandatory. He said on Twitter, quote, "Educators and students should not have to risk their health. They deserve to work and learn in a safe environment. Anything else is simply unacceptable," end quote. We'll be working to get more answers from Governor Holcomb during his weekly media briefing. It's set for 2:30 this afternoon. You can watch that live here on RTV6. You'll also be able to watch it at the IndyChannel.com and on the RTV6 Facebook page. Well, the pandemic has cost downtown Indianapolis yet another major event. Music for All says it will cancel all of its fall Bands of America marching band competitions across the country. Now, that includes Bands of America Super Regionals and the Bands of America Grand National Championships held every year at Lucas Oil Stadium. Bands of America Grand Nationals typically brings in more than 100 high school bands from across the country and around 80,000 people to the downtown area. Millions of Americans have been diagnosed with the coronavirus so far, but there's still more research saying that that number is likely much higher. Next, the president shifting his message on the virus after months of downplaying its impact. Now over to Todd.
And Lauren, we've been dealing with these waves of rain moving through. In fact, they started around this time yesterday, and we've had several since then. Going to kind of transition from the waves of rain to isolated storms here throughout the afternoon, but nonetheless, storm chances do continue. We'll talk all about it coming up in your Storm Team 6 forecast. The time now is 12:07. You're watching the news at noon right here on RTV6.
Welcome back. The number of coronavirus cases here in the U.S. is still climbing in many parts of the country. A new report from the CDC reveals the number of infections here in the U.S. could actually be much higher than initially thought. ABC's Inez de la Cotera tells us there's also new evidence of the risk of the virus and what it poses for children and babies.
At his first coronavirus briefing in 3 months, a dire acknowledgement from the president.
It will probably, unfortunately, get worse before it gets better.
The COVID tracking project reporting over 1,000 additional deaths in just the last 24 hours. Hospitalizations on the rise in at least 40 states, parts of the South looking like the Northeast back in April. The number of confirmed cases in California surpassing New York to become the state with the most infections. Texas and Florida not far behind. In Florida, hospitals nearing capacity. Baptist Health in Miami has just one ICU bed left.
Every day it's coming into more patients and they're very sick.
This as an alarming new report from the CDC estimates that the number of people infected by COVID-19 in the first few months of the pandemic is likely to be 10 times higher than previously thought.
A lot of people have gotten infected from this virus, but were never diagnosed, partly because we didn't have very good testing. We still don't have very good testing. And partly because some people just have very mild disease, and so they never even bother trying to get tested. But overall, what this study shows is that this virus has probably infected 30 to 40 million Americans.
In Texas, a surge in the number of babies testing positive for the virus. In North Texas, 433 babies testing positive in the 5 largest counties. This young mother recounting the moment she learned her 2-month-old daughter is battling the virus that continues to surge around the globe.
Everyone's like, oh, well, kids don't get it. So when you find out it's COVID, it's just like heartbreaking.
This comes as CDC Director Dr. Robert Redfield tells GMA he believes schools can now reopen, even as the number of cases among young people is on the rise, and CDC guidelines advise states and localities to wait until they see a decline in the number of COVID-19 cases. Inez de la Cotera, ABC News, Washington.
Well, he's back on the court right now, but he's also been busy when he's off the court. Next, a Pacer star known as the President and a new initiative growing out of his push for social justice. And let's take a live look outside right now. You can see some clouds hanging over the downtown area. We'll get a check of Todd's full forecast for the rest of our day and look ahead to a weekend. That is coming up right here on the news at noon. Stay with us. Welcome back. The Pacers' first scrimmage inside of the NBA bubble down in Orlando is set for tomorrow. Their first game is set for August 1st, but before team practice, Malcolm Brogdon celebrated a special moment. Nearly 2 months after he took part in protests for social justice down in Atlanta, the man who his teammates call the President backs up his words with action. Sports director Dave First takes a look.
He's back from COVID-19 and back at practice, but don't let the mask fool you. On a Zoom news conference, the Pacers' Malcolm Brogdon still has a lot to say.
Just growing up, I've always had the opportunity to travel to Africa, Ghana, Malawi, South Africa. I was always able to see poverty, see people that are less privileged than I am at a young age. That always stuck with me.
As a result, Malcolm launching a new website and foundation at the BrogdonFamilyFoundation.org with the goals of social justice, advocacy, equal access to education, and a clean water infrastructure in Africa.
It's always been a passion of mine. It's always been something where I knew I would want to help people. I knew I'd want that to be my life's passion. I just didn't know how I would do it or through what means or what avenue.
It comes as Malcolm completes his first season with the Pacers and the 4th overall with career highs in points, assists, and rebounds.
I got brothers, I got sisters, I got friends that are in the streets, that are out here.
The young man who helped lead peaceful protests in Atlanta, not unlike his grandfather did with Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., now backing it up off the court as much as he'd like on it when games resume. Malcolm, I know there was a big discussion a couple of weeks ago about to play or not to play, but bottom line, playing gives you this extra voice now to really let people know about this foundation.
Playing allows you to amplify your platform. It allows people to continue to focus on you. And by focusing on you, they're indirectly going to focus on whatever you're saying to the media. They're focusing on whatever you put on your jersey. They're focusing on everything you do. I think I can actually make more noise. I can have a bigger platform and a bigger voice while playing and while continuing my work here in the bubble.
He'll start education programs in Indianapolis and spread from there. The Pacers have made points all season long, making some very big ones for years to come. Dave First, RTV6 Sports.
All right, Dave, thank you so much. Let's go over to Todd right now for a look at our Wednesday forecast. Todd, it has been a wet Wednesday. What can we expect for the rest of the day?
You know, we're still going to have storms in the forecast here, Lauren. I don't think it's going to be as wet this afternoon as it was the first half of the day when we had several waves of rain moving through. But nonetheless, there will be some storms in the forecast on an isolated basis here and there across the area. So here's a live look at the satellite radar picture, and you can see this last wave of rain is making its way through the far southeastern portion of the state, and it's basically out of our area. Some light rain in Rushville up towards the Liberty area into Connorsville. As we slide a little further north into Richmond, some light rain is falling. But for the most part, that is coming to an end. We've had this one little cell here in Greencastle. This will continue to move over towards the Danville area, but no longer producing any lightning. It's just a rainmaker, and that is just about it. But as we expand out, I want to show you the overall weather pattern over the course of the last couple hours. And you can see that we've had these waves of rain just coming through central Indiana. And that's because we've had a front that's been like draped right across the state. And the front is acting as a roadway for these storms just to move along. However, things are starting to change a little bit in the sense of, well, I don't think we're going to see these waves of rain as we get into the afternoon hours. It's going to more be these spotty, isolated thunderstorms. We're still in a very unstable atmosphere, and if we break the clouds for any sunshine, we should be able to flare up these isolated storms pretty quick throughout the afternoon. And then once the sun sets, they'll kind of diminish across the area. But because of that threat, the Storm Prediction Center still has us under the marginal risk for severe weather, at least from the areas you see in green off towards the east. The main threat by far would be high winds, but can't rule out the chance of some localized flooding. But here's a very dreary look where that rain continues in the Greencastle area. That's that one little isolated cell of rain that's moving through. Temperatures are in the 70s. We'll get the temperatures up into the low to mid 80s across the area this afternoon as the clouds thin just a little bit. Tomorrow, still some isolated storm chances early on in the day, but then we should see more in the way of sunshine as the day goes on. The temperatures are still going to be in the 80s tomorrow, but with less in the way of a rain chance on Thursday, it's probably a better day than today. And then as we continue into Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, I can't rule out the chance of a stray storm for you Saturday and Sunday, but it would be extremely isolated. Otherwise, plenty of sunshine, a little bit warmer as temperatures climb into the upper 80s to low 90s. And then temperatures will stay around 90 degrees as we get into the day on Monday. Monday, a little better chance of some storms across the area. So just a little unsettled. Be weather aware here this afternoon, Lauren, for the chance of a few isolated storms. Then once we get to the weekend, a pretty nice stretch of weather.
All right, Todd, thank you. We know working moms are now dropping out. They're at risk for dropping out of the workforce in record numbers. And it's all because of the pandemic. They're not only scaling back on the job, they're also taking on more caregiving responsibilities. Scripps reporter Lauren Rosilla shows us the problems that they may face as a result.
For work, I really scaled back.
Tampa mother Lauren Clemens had to take several steps back at work when COVID-19 hit to take care of her young daughter. It made sense for her family because her husband is now the primary breadwinner, but she's worried about the long-term impacts on her career.
Everything was kind of on my shoulders, and then I'm trying to work during nap time, and I'm working until midnight to try and make up 8 hours of a day.
Oxfam America is a nonprofit that fights poverty, and in past recessions, they've seen a troubling trend. When jobs finally do start coming back online, women's full re-entry into the workforce almost always falls behind men. This as women take on a disproportionate amount of added responsibilities behind the scenes at home.
Women are the shock absorbers for our economies, for our societies, and men are pitching in, but they're not pitching in enough to take the burden off of women.
Advocates are now calling on employers to support working parents during the pandemic. This includes offering more flexible options, including the ability to work from home and allowing for alternative hours. Also subsidizing childcare costs and providing easier access to daycare through benefits plans. Clement says if her husband's employer would have provided those options, it would have made all the difference.
That flexibility basically would have afforded us a happier family.
And that was Lauren Rosilla with that report. Here's a live look outside again. A gloomy Wednesday. We'll have one final check of your forecast with Todd coming up right here on the News at Noon. Stay with us. Well, as the pandemic continues, live music shows are virtually at a standstill. A lot of musicians are being discovered for the first time through those streaming performances and even social media. One musician in particular is being spotted more and more recently, and apparently the stories you've heard are real. Well, this is Saxsquatch. I can hardly say that. He's very much real. We don't know much about the creature except that his Facebook page says that he's in Chapel Hill, North Carolina. Saxsquatch is also a working musician, and he's available for booking live shows and parties. So, Todd, keep that in mind for your birthday this fall. Pretty talented.
He is. I like the neon green saxophone. Never seen one like that before. All right, there's a few isolated storms out there right now, and we'll continue to have the chance of an isolated storm or two in the forecast here throughout the afternoon hours. One or two could be borderline spots of severe. Smaller storm chances tomorrow, but they're still around. And then a pretty nice stretch of weather, Lauren, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday with plenty of sunshine. Temperatures in the upper 80s to low 90s.
All right, Todd, thank you so much. And thank you for joining us and making RTV6 your choice for news. Come back and join us for the news at 5. Have a great Wednesday afternoon.